We got a bidet! Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm going to give you my thoughts on Vision Season 2. We had that come out recently, I think like a week or two ago, and I finally got around to watching it. So in this video, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to break down each of the new episodes, which I think there was 9 of them. Kind of give you a brief summary of what happened and then my quick thoughts on them. So without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so the first episode that was released was the one when I watched the trailer. I was like, oh, I really want to see that one because that Sith character looked cool. It's actually called Sith, and we follow this woman where she's kind of isolated, living in the middle of nowhere with a droid, and she's got like these different alarm systems around her outpost, and one of them gets destroyed, and she's kind of like, oh, maybe like a meteorite or something, kind of like a callback to Empire Strikes Back. Maybe it knocked it out. She goes to check it out. And when she checks it out, she finds out that it, in fact, is not just some random meteorite. Something or someone destroyed it. And it was kind of an ambush. She was ambushed by a Sith and a couple of that Sith's like henchmen type people. And she is basically chased back to her little house, her home. And what's interesting is that this character, the Sith character, is mentioning like, you promised like to be a part of the Sith, and she's running away, or you're breaking your promise type thing. So she's chased, and they eventually go back to her house. It's interesting because this whole like promise thing kind of reminds me of like a deal with the devil, like kind of like the Sith, it promises all this stuff, but once you go down that path, it's very hard to come back from it. And it kind of reminded me of like a selling your soul to the devil type deal. So they eventually get back to her living quarters, and they face off in a lightsaber duel. Our main character is able to win the battle, but it's really interesting because within the battle, she has like a yellow lightsaber, but then when they're kind of, having a dialogue back and forth, she ignites a second blade. So it's like double bladed, but one of them's yellow and one of them's red. So it kind of reminded me of like, this is where I've been, this is where I'm going. But yet she has some sort of trophy to what her history has been. So it was kind of an interesting one to watch. I thought it was very cool with the animation, and I thought it was cool, a cool way of, like I said, showing where she's been, showing where she's going. So just kind of encapsulating her life there in one big symbolic episode. The second episode that was on here was called Screecher's Reach, and it was about this like group of friends that decided to go to this like cave mountain area, which is said to be haunted, and they head out towards there, and it is said that there's like this screeching woman, and they go in the cave and they find this creepy creature. And what ends up happening is that this ghost, at least from my interpretation, is like a Sith ghost, because when it's chasing these friends around, it has like a red lightsaber. So yeah, they're being chased around by this woman creature that is screeching. In my interpretation, it's kind of like the main characters overcoming their darkness. I feel like some of these episodes seem to be somewhat symbolic, so that's why I'm kind of like, what is happening here? Because some of the episodes feel like, they're in the Star Wars universe, but there's something more beyond that that's happening. I feel like this is one of those episodes. It turns out that this is actually a test for one of our main characters. The character is supposed to, like, again, in my opinion, overcome their own darkness, and if they're successful, then they can begin their journey into Jedihood, so to speak. And we see that. We see once the Screeching Woman has been conquered by our main character, a ship shows up and we see the Jedi that are supposed to be taking her away. And it's very emotional. It's hard for her to walk away from her friends of the past, but she knows that she has this new life of the Jedi that she, wants to pursue. It's hard, but she ends up doing it anyways. The next episode, which is the third one, is called In the Stars. And what happens in this episode is we follow these two individuals. I believe they're sisters. One is much younger than the other. And they're kind of in this isolated, rundown area of a planet. And turns out that the reason why it is that way is because the Empire built a base and basically siphoned all the resources out of the land. They are holding like all the water that the area needs, and it caused a lot of the life on the planet to die. And so we got these two individuals that are heading towards this Imperial base, because the older one wants to go in and see if they can sneak around and, you know, take out some of the base, maybe flood it with the water, so on and so forth. We do learn that these two characters are a part of a village, and what happened is that the village recognized this Imperial threat, and they sent off some of their best warriors to go and take care of it, but none of them came back. So really, it's just the two of them that are left of their village. And it's also, there's this belief that all the villagers that went to the Imperial base that passed on, they are the stars up in the sky. And with the Imperial base that's there, it's creating like this smog. And because there's so much of it, you can't see above the clouds. You can't see the stars. So it's in a way saying, our ancestors can't look down and help and protect us because there's these Imperials that are causing this issue between us and the stars. So that's another reason why that they are trying to take out the Imperials, so to speak, or mess with their Imperial operations. Eventually they do find the Imperial base, and the older one is going to try to go in and steal some water. The younger one is kind of like, I can go out there, I can do things, and the older one's like, you stay behind, I'll go in, I'll get the stuff, and I'll come back. And so the older one goes in and is maneuvering their way around, and eventually the young one decides to do its own thing anyways and try to, go in and get water themselves. They're trying to impress their older sibling. And so they get caught. The younger one does. The younger one gets caught by the Imperials, and the Imperials basically decide to execute the child. They take the child to this cliff and throw the child over the edge of the cliff. And I thought, wow, this anime really has some daring efforts here to just like chuck a kid off the side of a cliff and kill them. But the older sibling is able to come in and help. And I believe the sibling used the Force. Let's see. Older sister does what she can to save her sister, but she is too late to save her from falling off a cliff. Older sister channels the Force and saves her sister. So yes, she uses the Force to save her sister and brings her back up onto the surface of the Imperial base. And they start like unleashing some Imperial forces on them, even like walkers and stuff, and they're able to destroy or take care of them. But ultimately, they use the Force to bring down the water tanks and flood the facility. So that was kind of their way of taking out the base and making it non-functional, which then in turn also cleared the skies so that their ancestors can look down on them again. I thought this one was interesting. I wasn't a huge fan of it because this was one of those types of stories where the plot is driven by a kid being stupid. And I feel like that type of plot line, if handled properly, it can work very well. But here I was just like, oh, this is what's going to happen. Oh, they're going to do this. Oh, they're going to save them with the Force. And so it seemed very predictable. Yeah, that's kind of my opinion on that one. Next episode wasn't really one of my favorites. It's called I Am Your Mother. It's kind of a play on I Am Your Father. And what we got here is Wedge Antilles is having this like family race set up. And our main character is kind of embarrassed of her mom, but ultimately the child goes to watch these races, and the mom shows up because the younger daughter forgot her lunch, and she has basically her house, which is a ship, entered into this race. And the mother and daughter take part in this race. There's a lot of little Easter eggs that are along the way. If you really love your Star Wars for its Easter eggs, this one will probably be good for you. But I thought it was all right. Eventually they win the race. It's pretty typical and predictable. One of the cool things I thought that was in this was that they had the ship from Fallen Order. That was kind of cool, like a nice little touch. But yeah, seemed like a very predictable episode that just really wasn't for me. The next episode was probably arguably one of my favorites. It was called Journey to the Darkhead. Now this one had a lot going on here. We have a Jedi that's been dealing with some tensions between the light and the dark. And basically the Jedi Council sends this individual out on a mission, and this mission is going to pretty much help this individual, be clear those temptations and whatnot. And basically they are sent out there to face off against the Sith. The Darkhead is like this big building with two statues with their heads, and there's like this big ring around it that connects the two statues. But we have our main character, that's a Jedi that's fighting the Sith. The Sith was pretty cool in my opinion. They had like this chain that kind of reminded me of an alien tail from the movie Aliens. So I thought that was really cool touch because they kind of used it as a whip in a way. So it was like a Sith version of Indiana Jones. So what we had happen in the battle is that our hero is actually almost killed. The hero is like wrapped up in that chain thing. The Sith is like taunting them and holding them over the edge. And the second character that traveled there with the Jedi throws like these flash grenade missile things, and it's enough to distract the Sith, just enough where the Jedi is able to like slash their way out and take care of the Sith. They are falling like to their doom, but the second one, that was the companion that was with our Jedi, jumps down there, grabs them, has a good old parachute and all that good stuff, and they are saved. I thought the animation was great on this one. The story was original, was really cool. They had some cool characters. And I liked how the Sith character had that cool whip that I mentioned. That weapon was really neat. Our next one was the Spy Dancer. So this one was kind of like a theater ballet type episode. The dancer in the ballet was once working with the rebellion, and there's this talk of wanting to be able to help them again. And there's a ton of Imperials that are coming to see this show. And basically what's happening is that they lure the Imperials in and then kill them. So they all got in there, but this one in particular time, the dancer is distracted. That is, the dancer sees an officer in the audience, and the officer strikes like some PTSD with the dancer because it reminds her of when she was back on her homeland. The Imperials destroyed her village and kidnapped her son and then left her for dead. So she thinks that this officer is the same one that took her son. So she goes back in her dressing room between acts, or between dances, and basically gets like this huge Assassin's Creed looking weapon to stab the dude. And so she goes to do um, another dance and goes up to that officer and is ready to just stab him right in the face. And she stops. And so this causes the Empire to be like, yo, they're trying to kill us. Let's take them out. And so a big battle erupts. And eventually, along the way, the dancer and this officer end up on top of the building. And she's explaining to this officer that, his people went to her village, and she's saying that this dude looks strikingly familiar, kind of a thing. And turns out that this officer is actually her son that was kidnapped when her village was destroyed. She leaves him with like her piece of jewelry that, in my opinion, means a lot to her, and then she dips. So it was kind of a cool episode in a way. Let's see, I said it was interesting that we saw some stormtroopers with their helmets off, and not only did we see guy stormtroopers, we saw female stormtroopers. So I thought that was kind of cool, like a nice touch. This is during the time of the Empire, not once the Empire fell or anything like that. Because we know when Disney took over and they started making the sequel trilogy, they started to emphasize that a little bit more with like Captain Phasma. But this is during like the original trilogy / post Revenge of the Sith era stuff. So I thought that was kind of cool to show that women were a part of the Empire at that time as well. The next episode was called The Bandits of Golak, I believe it was pronounced. This one, we start off with this, I believe, brother and sister, and they're on a train and they're heading towards like this village, and there is this like flute that the younger one has and the sister, and she's like playing the flute, and turns out like only I think Jedi can play the flute, and so she raises attention. The Empire is called, so then we get a big sequence with the stormtroopers coming in with swoop bikes, and then we kind of get like this Western train chase type sequence. The people in the train car are telling the little girl that, you're worth a lot of money to the Empire, and so they're debating whether to like kidnap her and turn her in. But eventually, her and her brother make it off of the train and they head towards this village. And we see this interaction between the sister and the brother in the village where she's kind of playing with like plates of food and whatnot. But then we get to the point where some of these plates of food are being played with, and she's like, it's not me, I'm not doing it. Because the Empire was alerted before, they're still searching out for this Jedi, and so we see a new Inquisitor character show up at the village. The Inquisitor has the Purge troopers with them as well that we've seen in Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor. And this Inquisitor is looking for the Jedi in the village. And we all know that, we have the little girl, but also it turns out that the Elder of the village is a Jedi as well. So that Elder comes out and confronts the Inquisitor and eventually slits the Inquisitor's throat and kills him. So this episode ends with the sister actually staying in the village and hopefully being mentored by the Elder Jedi in the future. It gave me a lot of like Aladdin type vibes with the way they were kind of handling the brother and sister. They seemed kind of like very smart thieves in a way. Because I believe they stole the flute. I think I have that correct. But yeah, I thought this was kind of like a Star Wars meets Aladdin type episode. It was interesting. Our second to last episode was called The Pit. This one was up there with one of my favorites. I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's up there with Journey to the Dark Head. But what we have here is that the Empire rallies these like prisoners and has them dig holes. Right away, it reminded me of the movie and the book Holes, if you've ever seen that. Because they're digging for, whatever treasure they can find in the ground. And eventually, one of the diggers finds a diamond-looking thing. We find out later that it's a kyber crystal, and I'll explain how we actually know that once we get there. So we know that the Empire is trying to find kyber crystals on this planet, and basically they just have these prisoners dig and dig and dig as much as they can, and they get like really, really down into the core. And once they get so far, the Empire is like, well, haven't seen any kyber or any of these jewels in a while, so you're done. And these people get their freedom, but the problem is that their freedom is to live in this hole until they die, like starve to death. So one of the people in the group says, hey, I have an idea. If I can go to the city and I can tell them, that we have all these people in this hole and we need help, help will come. And so he climbs his way up and out of the hole and heads toward the city. Once he gets to the city, though, he's asking all these citizens for help, and everybody's ignoring him like he's a crazy guy. Probably because they don't want to feel like they are sympathizing with the prisoner because the Empire is watching them. But eventually what happens is that this prisoner gets stunned by the stormtroopers, and they take him back to the hole and they just throw him into the hole. I believe he died. I didn't see him the rest of the episode, but I also didn't see whether he never got up off the ground. So I believe that he died from that. But the big thing here is that the people in the hole were like chanting. What were they chanting? They were chanting, "Follow the light." And by chanting this, it helped the citizens of the town come out to help them. Tons and tons of people marched to this hole so they could help these people get out with transports and stuff. The stormtroopers and the Empire tried to stop them and say, go back to the city, go back to your homes, but there were so many of these citizens that showed up that they were basically overpowered and they just left. So this kind of shows that even though this Empire is powerful, if you have strength in numbers, you can eventually drive out evil. Let's see. Oh yeah, and then near the end here, when they are being transported out of this big hole, one of the little girls from this hole is holding onto one of those diamonds, and when she's holding onto that little diamond looking thing, it turns blue, and that's how we find out that it's a kyber crystal. I think they're trying to play along those lines of, I remember in Visions Season 1, there was an episode where depending on who's holding the lightsaber, the kyber crystal will reflect that individual's color, and I think that's what they're playing off here in a way as well. The person that was holding it, they would be a blue lightsaber type person. They'd be a guardian. I did really like this one. Like I said, it's really up there for me. It was one of those episodes where, like, I'm Team Empire, but at times there's some hard episodes to be like, oh yeah, do I support them in this episode kind of a thing? And I thought it was cool how this episode was like, I actually don't really like what's happening here. So it brought out some emotions, and I enjoyed that. Our final episode for season 2 of Visions was called, I hopefully am pronouncing this, Au's Song. Basically, there was this planet that had kyber crystals, and the Sith made all the kyber crystals turn red, and it's the job of these couple of people to go and get these kyber crystals. While they're trying to get these kyber crystals, the younger one falls in this tunnel and eventually goes into one of the caves. But there's like a quake that happens, and so the person that they're with gets them out of the cave, and the third person that's in the group turns out is a Jedi. They, get away, but the main character, this Au character, Turns out that the singing voice of this character can purify kyber crystals. So they're gathering all these red lightsaber crystals so that, you know, this person can sing and then turn them back to their normal form. Really wasn't an episode for me. I didn't really care for it. I felt like it was a little too like kumbaya-ish. Definitely wouldn't be the season, volume finale I would have picked. But it was alright, I guess. Alright, everybody, that about wraps it up for us today. Again, we talked about Visions Season 2 that came out on Disney+. I would say it's a decent watch. There's only 9 episodes. They're about 15 minutes a piece, not including your credits. So if you like Season 1, check it out. If you haven't seen Visions at all, I'd probably watch Season 1 first and then Season 2. I mean, they're not connected. Well, watch whatever order you want. I don't care. None of them are connected, so just have fun with it, I suppose. If you enjoy this type of video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We are talking about Star Wars all the time, so check out our videos in the future. If you like the video, drop us a like and then also drop us a comment letting us know your thoughts on Visions Volume 2 on Disney+. Did you like it? What was your favorite episode? Which ones didn't you like and why? Let us know. And then, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.